Did you guys know that political leaders all across the political spectrum have now given up hope of a Palestinian state? And not only this, most people don't know that a Palestinian state would be absolutely terrible for the Palestinian people. Guys, stay tuned. All this and much more right here at the Israel Guys.
Hello and welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of fake news, you should connect to the true and authentic stories of Israel. Luke Hilton here with Joshua Waller on the Mount of Blessing in the biblical heartland of Israel. Happy to be with you guys this week. We got lots of news straight out of Israel for you today. Coming up first, make sure you subscribe. It means hitting that little button. If it's on your phone, if it's on your computer, you hit the button and then you hit the notification bell and you hit all. Got to say it differently, because if I say it the same way, you'll tune me out.
Tune out.
Every single time.
Tune in.
And comment. You guys are like an amazing comment community, even though you get into fights sometimes, but we appreciate it still. Creates lots of engagement. We like hearing from you. We like reading them. Sometimes I get on there and answer you. Josh, he reads the comments. He doesn't answer, but that's okay. If you want to support the work that we're doing, you can go to theisraelguys.com. or patreon.com/theisraelguys, all the links in the description below. And you can check out our referral links. They're great ways to support us, support businesses here in Israel, and support, businesses here in Israel.
Good job, Luke.
Got myself messed up there. Anyways, Josh, we're going to talk about a Palestinian state. Lots of quotes from world leaders in the past couple of weeks. But before we get to that, a lot of people ask people, what myths do you want us to bust here in Israel? A lot of people talk about B'Tselem. A lot of people talk about breaking the silence. There are two supposedly two supposedly humanitarian or human rights groups monitoring like Israeli brutality and stuff like that. They're actually just undercover, completely pro-Palestinian, full of lives organizations. We busted both of them. Yeah. If you haven't seen the short myth-busting video that we did on breaking the silence, it's on the channel from last week. Make sure you check that out. A couple of months ago, we did a video about B'Tselem. But in the news this week, B'Tselem was caught red-handed trying to frame Israeli settlers and right-wingers for setting fire to a Palestinian building or an Arab building.
What, Luke? Can you think that they actually don't know the truth, or are they just blatant liars?
Yes.
Yes.
So there's a problem with this story, right? Okay, so B'Tselem activist Basel al-Adera, he tried to frame right-wingers near Hebron for setting fire to a building owned by Arabs. The only problem is that the building was actually set fire by Arabs themselves. How do we know that? IDF soldier, an officer, was standing right there. Saw the whole thing. And according to other people on the scene, Arabs tried to set fire to the building. Then they grabbed this photographer that was with him, said, come on, quick, the Jews are setting fire to our building. They were going to catch it all on camera. You know, we've exposed fake riots before. And got caught red-handed. The head of the Mount Hebron Regional Council, Yochai Damari, said in a statement, quote, once an Arab was caught knocking himself down and sending pictures to the whole world as if he'd been hit. Another time, another Palestinian was caught setting fire to his own equipment warehouse and shouting that the Jews had caused it. If there were no cameras, then these provocations would be believed everywhere. I demand an immediate stop to all the quarrelsome instigators and the perpetrators of the provocation, such as the one photographed in the article, who is known to the security forces. Why do Palestinians and pro-Palestinian activists make up stories like this?
Because they know it's going to fall on ears of people that love hating Jews. I think that's like a pretty well-rounded news understanding.
That's
like,
exactly.
Look at the AP.
That's one of them.
Yeah.
The other reason is because they know the media will go right along with them.
They're going to go
the
for
photographers.
It, yeah.
I mean, we caught the riot on camera. All the cameras were aimed right at the rioters. None of them were aimed at the empty street that they were throwing rocks at. Yeah. And so they know that the media will go right along with it, and the entire world will believe it.
Buy it.
And so that's why they do it.
Yeah.
So, but you guys know the truth because you are subscribed to the Israel Guys channel, and we get to the bottom of the stories here in Israel, not the fake news that the rest of the media is
it's almost like
out.
bringing us back to the Dark Ages or something, where people like just want to hate Jews for hating Jews' sake. Like, what in the world? Like making up outlandish stories. A Jew lit my barn on fire. When you go and light it
on
yourself.
fire myself.
Yeah, I lit it on fire myself so I could make a story. That's like that was 1,000 years ago. That's what was happening.
Right.
Like there was so much anti-Semitism in the world then, and it led to excruciating pain to the Jewish community all over the world. And we've had thousands of years of that kind of torture against the Jewish people. And today we're seeing the exact same thing happen again. I'd say atrocious. And that's where our mainstream media has landed. That's horrific.
Yeah.
And it's not acceptable.
You guys don't accept it, though. Josh, lots of world leaders talking about a Palestinian state. It's funny because so many people talk about a Palestinian state as the only option for Israel and the Arabs, right? And the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But yet, everybody's given up on the idea of a Palestinian state. So what's going on here?
Maybe it ties in, actually, Luke, to what we just talked about. People like bashing
People don't know
Israel,
the truth, yeah.
and they don't know the truth.
Right.
The truth is that there can't be a Palestinian state in the land allotted to Israel.
And guess
this
what?
is the state of Israel. Why create another Palestinian, another Arab, and no Palestinian? That's a bunch of what? It's just fake.
Yeah.
Fake.
And by the way, it would be the worst possible thing for the Arab people themselves that are living here.
Well, they don't want it
By
themselves.
the way, so Minister of the Interior here in Israel, Ayelet Shaked, was in the UAE this week.
Yeah.
And she talked to a UAE news outlet about the idea of a Palestinian state. She said, quote, "The Israeli government won't deliberate on the establishment of a Palestinian state under the present government of Bennett or Lapid when he comes into office under the rotational agreement. There's a consensus among the parties in the government, not to get involved in the issue, which could cause an internal rift. We believe in economic peace as a means of improving Palestinians' lives and to create cooperative industrial zones, but not a state with an army. Absolutely not." Who else has been talking about a Palestinian state recently? Well, President Joe Biden, who is himself in favor of a Palestinian state.
Right.
He addressed the UN recently. After reiterating America's unequivocal support for an independent Jewish state, he went on to talk about a two-state solution. And he said, quote, "A two-state solution is the best way to ensure Israel's future as a Jewish democratic state, living in peace alongside a viable, sovereign, and democratic Palestinian state." Sorry, but it's a little bit in the clouds right there. He
You have
goes
to be
on.
literally incoherent to say. I mean, like, could you say all that about a Palestinian state?
Right.
Have you not
just
like
some
just
of the
looked at
like
the
there's
basic
keywords,
news?
right? There's keywords there. Keywords are Jewish democratic state, living in peace, alongside a viable, sovereign, and democratic Palestinian state. All of those things.
Yeah.
What one of those things is not like the other? It's not a game, right? Those things don't go together. It's like
No.
puzzle pieces don't fit. We're going to talk about it in just a
Democratic
second.
Palestinian
But he went on
state.
to say, quote, "We are a long way from that goal at this moment, but we must never allow ourselves to give up on the possibility of progress." So he knows it's just not happening, right?
But it's good to throw the word
even though he
progress.
says it should happen.
Yeah, that's like
But
the
it's not
word-
happening.
It's the word of our time, Luke. Progress.
Current Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, he was short and sweet. He said it would be, quote, "a terrible mistake. I won't do that."
Yeah.
And even Yair Lapid, who is also an advocate for a two-state solution, he said, quote, "It's not realistic to speak of peace negotiations in the current circumstances and not only on this side of the border." He's a firm believer in the two-state solution.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Israeli leaders, both sides of the political spectrum, and President Joe Biden, who's in favor of a two-state solution. All of them know it's not possible, it's not viable, and it's not happening anytime in the near future. Question is, why?
Yeah.
Why would it be a bad idea to create a Palestinian state?
Well,
Okay.
for the Jews and for the Arabs.
There's two reasons.
Yeah.
Number one, for Israel. Okay, why is it a bad for Israel? Because it would be absolute suicide. And I'm literally talking about suicide. Let's talk about Gaza. Israel gave away the Gaza Strip to the Arabs in 2006 or 2005. Immediately, within months, right? Just a couple months,
rockets.
Hamas comes in, takes over, and not only creates a living hell for the Arab people living there, but creates hell for the Israeli people on the other side of the border by shooting tens of thousands of rockets into Israel since that time, since 2005.
Can I just say on every level, Luke?
And digging tunnels,
Yeah, that's what
sending
I'm saying.
terrorists in.
They're going under the ground.
Yeah.
They're sending people on the border, and then they're going through the skies. Like,
Okay, that's a small.
dun.
That's a
Yeah.
small example, right? You have Israel pulled out 8,000 Israelis from the Gaza Strip. Now there's about 1 million Gazans living in Gaza. That's like a small example. Okay, now we go to Judea and Samaria, which is where they want to create a Palestinian state. You're talking about huge scale. Not only is there 730,000 Israelis living inside Judea and Samaria, you have 1 to 2 million Arabs, and they want to create a Palestinian state here, which obviously means some Jews, at least some, get evicted, dragged out, which won't happen, can't happen with 730,000 Jews. It's just impossible. And then you have impossible borders, 9 miles at the shortest, right, with the mountain range. This is the mountain range. And instead of having rockets that are being lobbed into Israel, you have the mountain range, Palestinian state, overlooking the coastal region where 80% of Israel's population lives, and where their airport and their government and their infrastructure and their industrial zones, high tech, all lives right there. So it's absolute suicide.
And Luke, I want to say that you said 9 miles. That's not the West Bank, so-called West Bank area of a Palestinian state. The 9 miles, you got to make it straight.
That's between
9 miles.
That's between the border and the Mediterranean Sea.
And Israeli, what they call Israel proper, is Israel's border from the Mediterranean Sea to the Israel.
Let's put it this way.
Where a Palestinian state.
Let's put it this way. Israel would be cutting out the heart of the country and giving it to the Palestinians.
And leaving Israel with a 9 mile wide gap
to
between
defend
their Palestinian state in the mountain region and Israel laying low.
Literally, where we
coast.
are right now, we see ships floating in the Mediterranean Ocean. We see airplanes heading to Ben Gurion Airport. We can see all the high rises of Tel Aviv and Netanya and Ashdod. We see it all from right
and
here.
Luke, I think there's a misconception out there that says that the reason why Israelis don't want a Palestinian state is because they hate Arabs. Well, that's a misconception. That's not true. The reason why the Israelis from left to right, really on the political leaders, as we just read off, don't want to or cannot have a Palestinian state is because an armed, as we said, some of them are pro-Palestinian state, but they've got very specific criteria for it. An armed Palestinian state, like an equal democratic state. The reason why that cannot happen is because they're dead bent on killing every Jew in the land of Israel and driving them into the ocean.
And all of the Palestinian rhetoric, the propaganda, the curriculum of the schools does not talk about a Palestinian state alongside a Jewish state. All of the rhetoric talks about from the river to the sea, meaning Judea and Samaria, West Bank, and Israel proper. All of Israel is supposed to belong to the Palestinian people.
And Luke, we got to do a adventure show on this one of these days. But there's not a map inside the Palestinian Arab world that has a map where Israel gets this chunk and Arabs get this chunk. This is what you're saying.
Right.
In the schools, doesn't matter. Mayor's office. We were just in the mayor's office a few months ago. The map's all over his office. There was one map, and it was the map of what everybody knows today is Israel. But guess what? The name Israel is erased, and the word Palestine was over the top of it. No land was allotted to the nation or people of Israel. I want that to be crystal clear. It's not that the Jewish people are just anti-Arab. That's just not the way it is. They love Arab people. Look. We just had just in the UAE. Like the Jewish people are really open to peace.
Look at the
want this,
Abraham Accords.
but they won't lay down and be killed. In the world, like there's such a problem in the world today where there's so much anti-Semitism, as we just started our show off with, that people actually don't understand that there's truth. That the Jewish people have a right to a homeland. Is that amazing? Is that okay? It's okay. The Jewish people have a right to a homeland.
No, it's not okay. It's like the right thing to do.
Right.
Yeah. Got to stand on the right side of history. Josh, the other reason why a Palestinian state is bad, because it's bad for the Palestinians. Why is it bad for the Palestinians? You have the Palestinian Authority in power right now. They've been in power since 2006. They're led by an 85-year-old man who's like 12 years or something like that over his term limit. And the number one priority for this government is paying murderers, paying terrorists who have killed Israelis. Yeah. Even if they're sitting in prison. That's their number one priority. Number one. You can look it up, okay, folks?
Luke, what if it was just the other way around? What if the Jewish people's number one priority was to kill all the Arabs?
Josh,
or pay Jews to kill Arabs. What if that was the situation? That's where you know, if you're listening to the show right now and you just realized that you have a different set of standards for the Arab world than you do the Jewish world, then you're anti-Semitic and you need to you just got to flip. Okay, if you're okay with a boss paying people to kill Jews and you want a Palestinian state, you want a state that pays terrorists to kill Jews, but you don't, and you're not okay, or if we flip that situation over to the other way and you think it's terrible, what if there's a Jewish state that paid Jews to kill Arabs? Mm-hmm. It never happened. No. Jews do not pay Jews to kill Arabs. There's a difference.
Yep.
And it starts with the children. It starts with the training. It starts with from their time they're in school to the time they're adults. They're being brainwashed to kill Jews. Okay, this is the bottom line.
Palestinian Authority
difference.
even killed one of their own people just for speaking out against the corruption in the government. Okay? There's no future for the Arabs living in Judea and Samaria under the Palestinian Authority.
No.
And it would be 100% worse if they actually created a Palestinian state. And it could be even worse than 100% worse if Hamas took over, okay?
Yeah.
Because then you're living in a war zone. You're living in a living hell, which is what the Gaza Strip is right now. Josh, I think
under tyrants.
Josh, we could go on this. This is like
it's a little bit
guys,
passionate.
I mean, it's important. You have to know and you have to share this content. But we have to move on.
But look, the good news is that the world is understanding that this is not possible.
Right.
A Palestinian state
and we have
is
to
not
move on
feasible.
from that. We have to move on and say what's good for Israel, and then we have to say how can we help the Arabs that are living under oppression under the Palestinian Authority here? What's best for them? And what is Israel doing? They're improving their economy.
And look, to a world that's changing, a world that understands that Israel is not the problem, a world that's not anti-Semitic. I just want to say, Israel's doing a lot of good in this region, and that people need to open their eyes to it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was
People got to open their eyes to the good.
Open your eyes.
Israel's doing an amazing job of bringing peace to this region. This is just a fact. And if America and the allies of Israel would actually stand with their ally and support Israel, behind Israel allow Israel to make the decision Israel needs to make, we'd see a lot of peace out here.
That's right. Josh, quick break in. That is because our #1 best-selling product every single year, and it always sells out within like a month, maybe 2 months, is our journal plus a Bible reading plan plus the Hebrew calendar, and that equals what is called the Daily Bread Journal. This is for Christians out there. Main audience is Christians. It's a Bible reading plan that includes the Torah portions. If you're really want to get into the Torah portions and embracing that heritage, the Old Testament portions and New Testament portions, and together you read through the entire Bible in 1 year. And it has the Jewish calendar on there, so you get all the feasts, all the significant times, and it has space for journaling. And they're really amazing hardback journals. They have them in women's editions and the regular editions, and every year we sell out super, super fast, and they're selling like hotcakes right now. So if you want one, you got to go to theisraelguys.com. The specific link will be in the description below. Grab one of these journals today.
Luke, we're getting into building freezes again, and we're talking about America not standing with Israel. We're talking about Israel trying to figure out what's going on here. Why are they not supporting America? With the past shows, we talk about Iran and what's going on with Iran. But now we've got another, we're zoning in here, and we have a Axios report on a news report about just covering the scene. What's happened since August 27th when Bennett met with Biden, and they talked about what should happen in Israel, what the relationship would be. One of the things that Biden told Bennett in their meeting was that he expected Israel to show restraint, and restraint in building the settlements. Now, that's for some reason, Luke, we talked about a Palestinian state. This is another point that gets me so riled up and so why would every world leader be consumed with one thing? They're consumed with what's going on in Jerusalem,
right?
And they're consumed really. Like Biden and Bennett meet. They're going to be, and I'm going to boil it down for you guys. They're talking about building a house in the town right next to where we're sitting right now.
Yep.
They're talking about building a house, not talking about building a city. Okay, so who cares if they're building a new city in, wherever, in Miami, or a new city in, Guatemala somewhere?
Yeah.
What? Who cares? Guatemala can build cities. It's Guatemala. But when it comes to Israel, there's a different standard. And Biden is telling Bennett, slow down your building. Don't be building houses for your citizens there. Why? Does that have anything to do with Biden? Why? And not before, and every president before. Even Trump.
Yes.
I'm telling you.
No, going back
even
for,
Trump was
going back for
consumed with
40
Jews
years.
building here in Judea and Samaria. Now there was some positives to Trump plan, but there was also some negatives to it, that he was going to put the Jews in these little what do you call
enclaves,
them? Enclaves. So this is a major issue, and this issue is continuing now in the Biden administration, where they said that they're putting pressure on the Bennett government not to build Judea and Samaria.
I think the specific word, there's a report out this week that a senior official asked, basically from the U.S., is relaying the message that President Biden would like Israel to show restraint. Yeah, is that what the word was used? I believe
Bennett responded to Biden at the time saying, "Okay, We're only going to build
natural growth
with natural growth. So whatever happens naturally, we're not going to expand beyond the natural growth, which is problematic. Like that's not how a nation. You can't have that kind of thumb, like just stick your thumb and just smear it down.
Well, because
like,
Israel's a startup nation, and there's thousands of people that want to move to these areas, and they have waiting lists to move in, but they're so restrained when they're building apartment buildings and houses that it's just impossible.
Yeah. Now here's something really political. There's an area next to Jerusalem. It's called the E1 area.
Right.
Now, there's a senior official here in the Jerusalem embassy a U.S. official that has also said to the Bennett government here in Israel, saying, "Hey, I just want to reiterate what Biden told you guys. Stop. Use restraint. Don't be doing a lot of building in these areas." Well, here's why.
Well, specifically the E1 area.
The E1 area. Now, why? Because even though they're saying they're losing hope of a two-state solution, they're still like grasping for air. They're like, we want to establish an Arab state in Israel. Now, the problem with the E1 area is if Israel builds that area, that sections off the two-state solution into two different north and south. Because that area like cuts it off.
Right.
So as a Zionist thing, this is amazing that Israel would be a whole unit in itself. Now, that's why you always hear about the E1 area of Jerusalem, and they're saying no, we've got to not allow, because that's like the hot point. Don't allow Jews to build in the E1 because that divides our Palestinian state idea.
And we're not talking about a so-called settlement in Judea or Samaria. We're talking about Jerusalem.
Yeah, Jerusalem.
Which is the capital, recognized by the U.S. now, the official capital of Israel.
Yeah.
And not only that, but housing approvals have now been put on pause, right?
Yeah. So there actually is a building freeze, but just because of the bureaucracy. Because now the Bennett government is looking to the Biden administration to say, can we please build in our land? And they're saying, no, don't use restraint. And now then there's people pushing forward, and now it's all caught up in bureaucracies.
And it's a political dance. It's like a tightrope that Israel tries to walk all the time. We got to make America happy, but we also need to do what we need to do. We got to make America happy. We don't make them upset because they give us funding for the Iron Dome.
Maybe.
Hopefully,
then, no, it's all gone through.
But they
now.
give us they give us fighter
airplanes and whatever. Yeah, I mean, hopefully all that continues. I mean, but before the Bennett meeting, he had planned for approval of 2,000 homes in the communities of Judea and Samaria and 1,000 homes in Palestinian areas. Now, this is a new thing on the political spectrum as well. Used to, they would give homes to be built in Judea and Samaria. The Israeli government would say 2,000 or 3,000 homes to be built in Jewish areas. No mention about Arab areas.
Right.
Okay. So now the new political thing is on the scene.
To clarify, you're talking about Area C because the Arabs don't need permission to build in Area A and B. They build there, and also they build illegally in Area C. So
Area C is allotted it's like Israeli government land.
Right.
So what they're doing is they're giving away Israeli government land to Arabs to build on. So now they're giving 2,000 units to be built in Jewish towns, and now 1,000 units to be built on Jewish government land that now is going to be scratched as Jewish government land and now
given to the Palestinians.
Given to Palestinian State idea, right? Creating their own area. So that's a big problem. But, okay, this wasn't passed through because of all this stuff. So maybe thank God it wasn't passed through because it's got this 1,000 homes of giving away Jewish land. But here's a few quotes. We got a senior Israeli official, senior U.S. official, and a U.S. embassy spokesman. Let's get these quotes. The Israeli official says, there's great sensitivity right now with the Americans about settlements. Is that like a boom? What would you ever guess? There's great sensitivity right now. This is the reason for the approval of new planning and building in the settlements is held up for now. So this is the reason why.
When has there not been great sensitivity between Israel and the U.S.?
And I'm telling you guys, it doesn't make a lick of sense. It really makes zero sense. There's much bigger problems going on in the world.
Yeah. When you remove the politics, remove the bureaucracy, remove the leaders, like just your brain, think about, okay, the White House is constantly worried and has been for the last 30 years about any Jew that's building a home in Judea.
And can I just say this? Look, they don't care if an Arab builds a home. Like right behind us.
Oh, no.
Within about 500 meters of us
illegally,
here,
not even legally.
There's Arabs building homes about 500 meters from us.
We're not even talking about with building permits. We're talking about
100%
illegal.
100% illegal and on that Area C, government land. The Israeli government land. So we could rant on this for hours. Yeah. But literally, that's what's going on that front. But the Jew, it's only to the Jew. The Jews not allowed to build.
Yes.
I know Jews, Luke, that would want to build a porch on the back of their house, and if they did, and they have done it, and it has been bulldozed because they were Jew.
Oh, yeah.
The Arab right next door to them, like literally down in Hebron or these areas,
Right.
literally they're like windows apart. They could build a unit and it would not be touched. Like that's the political situation.
That's
A U.S. official also, Biden administration has been engaged with the Israeli government regarding settlements on a weekly basis. Okay?
Of course.
Yeah, weekly basis. Is there anything that the Biden administration has been talking about except for like Corona maybe on a weekly basis?
Yeah.
This is like, okay.
No, I mean, talking to Israel, especially.
Yeah.
Josh, put the icing on the cake. U.S. Embassy spokesperson called for, quote, all parties to refrain from unilateral steps that exacerbate tensions and undercut efforts to advance a negotiated two-state solution that includes settlement activity. And just to clarify, when a U.S. official says all parties refrain, he's specifically talking about
Building.
Jewish parties refraining from building.
Because
Josh,
again, Arabs are building like crazy.
Yes.
Right now. We can watch them out
And
our
nobody
back window.
cares. Nobody cares. Josh, running out of time. You ready for a little bit of good news?
Yeah, let's do it.
Israel took a step in the right direction this week regarding the Temple Mount. A Jerusalem magistrate judge actually ruled that silent prayer on the Temple Mount cannot be considered a criminal act. And she ordered the police to drop a restraining order on Rabbi Aryeh Lipo, who had been barred from the Temple Mount because he'd engaged in silent prayer.
Luke,
Good
hold
news or
on
bad
just a
news,
second.
Josh?
I'm like, okay, this is great to hear because I heard the words prayer, but then I heard silent. Am I praying right now?
I knew you
I was silent.
I have an issue with this,
Did you? Was I praying or was I not? Okay,
don't know.
that means you can't thank on the Temple Mount. What? I don't. Okay, Luke, I don't understand.
No.
Silent prayer?
Okay. I bet on the Temple Mount recently.
Okay, yeah, okay. Explain it a little bit more.
I've seen it. I've seen this actually happening.
So their lips are actually moving.
The police have actually been really good about doing it. Their lips are moving. Sometimes they're rocking a little bit. Sometimes they're doing the prayers off their phone, stuff like that. And sometimes they're actually doing it quietly. And it
Like under their
depends.
breath.
The police usually let it go by. If it gets a little bit too demonstrative, then they tell
Okay,
them
so
to
Luke,
stop.
I agree that it's a big
It's
move.
a step in the right
It's a step
direction.
in the right
I didn't
direction.
say it was the 100%. Okay,
It's still not rights. It's still not rights on the Temple Mount.
it's a step towards right.
It's a little bit
It's a step
like used
towards
to.
right.
You would be arrested literally for just moving your lips. You weren't even saying it. You're just moving your lips.
That's right.
So, but thank God now.
No,
okay,
it's
a step
much,
forward.
much better. Yeah.
It's a step forward.
Much better. It's not all the way
I
there
just
yet,
wanna bring
but
it
it's
out,
the
Luke.
slowness. I got to look up the quote. It's the slowness of the redemption, right? So it's the part in the slow.
I just have to bring that out, though,
That's
Luke.
good news.
Yeah.
It's good news.
Yeah.
But it's not all the way there.
Slowly but surely.
Guys, check out our source links below to get further into all these stories. And let us know what you think in the comments. In the meantime, tune out the fake news and tune into what is actually happening right here in the heartland of Israel.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Go ahead and subscribe if you like that content. We can get it to you every week, right there at your fingertips. If you really liked it and have questions, anything, we love comments. Go ahead and leave us a comment as well. If you'd like to even go further, your support would be greatly appreciated. We've got lots of content, lots of ideas that we want to keep pushing out there. If you want to support, you can go to our Patreon page or check us out at theisraelguys.com.